One, I've got an exciting find for you today. A 1972 Plymouth Duster that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $13,000. This classic muscle car is a real gem, sporting a manual transmission that'll make you feel connected to the road like never before. With only 79,000 miles on the odometer, this baby's got plenty of life left in it. Now, I've got to be honest with you. The seller describes it as a project car, and it does need some TLC in the paint department. But don't let that discourage you. The interior is clean, which is a huge plus, and the fact that it runs and drives is music to any gearhead's ears. The yellow paint might be showing its age, but imagine how stunning this Duster will look with a fresh coat. With a clean title and running on good old-fashioned gas, this could be your ticket to owning a piece of American automotive history. Sure, it's not perfect, but that's part of the charm, right? This Duster is just waiting for someone to give it some love and bring it back to its former glory. So, if you're up for a rewarding project and want to cruise in style, this 72 Duster might just be the ride you've been dreaming of. 2. We're diving into a real gem, a 1983 Cadillac Eldorado that's currently up for grabs at a cool $8,000. Let me tell you, this baby is a time capsule of luxury and style. With only 24,523 miles on the clock, this caddy has barely stretched its legs. Picture this, a sleek white exterior paired with a vibrant blue leather interior that'll make you feel like automotive royalty. Under the hood, you've got a beefy 4100 V8 engine, mated to a smooth 4-speed overdrive automatic transmission, giving you that classic Cadillac power and grace. Now, I've got to be real with you. The seller says it's in good condition, and with that low mileage, I'm inclined to believe them. This front-wheel drive coupe comes loaded with all the goodies you'd expect from a Cadillac. Power everything: brakes, locks, seats, steering, and windows. Plus, you've got AC to keep you cool and an AM/FM radio to cruise to your favorite tunes. But wait, there's more. The telescopic and tilt steering wheel lets you find that perfect driving position, and those white wall radial tires? They're the cherry on top of this classic sundae. Look, I know $8,000 might seem steep, but for a piece of automotive history in this condition, it's a steal. The seller's even open to offers, so there might be room to negotiate. If you're in the market for a classic luxury ride that'll turn heads and transport you back to the early '80s in style, this Eldorado might just be your ticket. Don't sleep on this one, folks. Classic caddies like this don't come around every day. 3. I've got a real treat for you today. A 1970 Plymouth Duster that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $8,800. Now let me be straight with you. This isn't a turnkey cruiser, but it's a diamond in the rough that's begging for some TLC. This Duster is a genuine H-code 340 4-speed, which is a rare find these days. The seller's offering it as a roller, so there's no drivetrain, but don't let that discourage you. What you're getting is a solid foundation for an incredible build. The body is wrapped in that eye-popping, high-impact lemon twist yellow that'll make sure you're noticed wherever you go. Now here's where it gets exciting. This Duster comes with some seriously desirable factory options. We're talking rally gauges, power steering, and disc brakes. Plus, it's got the coveted 834 rear end, which is music to any drag racer's ears. The seller claims the body has zero rust and no patch panels, which is pretty impressive for a 50-year-old car. With 138,000 miles on the clock, it's seen its share of road, but that's not bad for its age. The best part? It comes with a clean California title, and it's on a current non-op status, so no back fees to worry about. Look, I know $8,800 might seem steep for a car without a drivetrain, but consider this. The seller mentions that fully restored H-code A bodies are fetching north of $45K. That leaves a lot of room for investment and potential profit if you're looking to flip it. So, if you've been dreaming of a classic Mopar project and have the skills, or know someone who does, to bring this beauty back to life, this 1970 Duster could be your ticket to muscle car nirvana. Just remember, it's a project, so be prepared for some work. But man, when you fire up that 340 for the first time, it'll all be worth it. 4. We're diving into a real gem that's popped up on Craigslist. A 1966 Rambler Classic convertible, and get this, It's going for just $6,500. Now I've got to be honest with you, this isn't a showroom-ready beauty, but it's got potential written all over it. Let's break it down. This Rambler is rocking a V8 under the hood, paired with an automatic transmission, making it a smooth cruiser. With 96,500 miles on the clock, it's got some stories to tell, but that's not bad for a car pushing 60 years old. The seller describes it as a survivor, and I've got to say, that's pretty spot on. Now, here's where it gets exciting. This baby is 99% rust-free. For a car of this vintage, that's like striking gold. It's wrapped in a cheerful yellow paint that'll make sure you're noticed on the road. And did I mention it's a convertible? Perfect for those sunny weekend drives. The seller says it runs and drives, which is always a good start. However, they're upfront about it needing a little TLC. That could mean anything from minor mechanical work to some interior sprucing up. But hey, that's part of the fun with classic cars, right? Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This Rambler isn't perfect. It's going to need some work to bring it back to its former glory. But with a clean title and a solid, nearly rust-free body, you're starting from a great place. For $6,500, you're getting a piece of American automotive history that you can drive and enjoy while you fix it up. It's not every day you come across a V8-powered convertible Rambler in this condition and at this price point. So, if you've been itching for a classic car project that won't break the bank and you don't mind putting in a little elbow grease, this 1966 Rambler Classic could be your ticket to cool cruising. Just remember, it's a project, not a perfect car, but man, the potential here is exciting. 5. I've got a real treat for you today, a 1978 Lincoln Mark V that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for just $4,500. Now let me be straight with you. This isn't a perfect car, but it's got potential written all over it. This Lincoln is a true classic from the era of big, bold American luxury. With only 49,000 miles on the clock, this baby has barely stretched its legs. The seller describes it as a beautiful car, and I can believe it. These Mark Vs were known for their striking design and imposing presence. Now, here's the scoop. This Lincoln runs and drives, which is always a great start for a classic. The seller mentions it's already had a complete tune-up, so that's one less thing to worry about. However, they're upfront about a couple of issues. It needs a new battery, which is a pretty easy fix, and the driver's side window switch needs attention. But hey, that's par for the course with cars of this vintage. The best part? The seller says it wouldn't take much to put this baby back on the road. That suggests it's been sitting for a while, but it's not too far gone. With a clean title and that low mileage, you're starting from a pretty good place. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This Lincoln will need some work. But at $4,500, you're getting a lot of car for your money. These Mark Vs are known for their smooth ride, thanks to that automatic transmission and gas-guzzling V8 engine. So, if you've been dreaming of cruising in 70s luxury style and don't mind putting in a little effort, this 1978 Lincoln Mark V could be your ticket to ride. It's not perfect, but with some TLC you could have a real head-turner on your hands. Just remember, it's a project, not a show car. But man, the potential here is exciting. Imagine rolling up to a classic car show in this beast once you've got it sorted out. Now that's what I call making an entrance. 6. I've got something really special for you today. A 1979 Ford Fairmont that's been converted into a pickup truck. Now, I know what you're thinking. A Fairmont pickup? That's not a thing. Well, buckle up, because this custom creation is currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $8,500. Let's dive into this automotive oddity, shall we? This Fairmont started life as a regular sedan, but somewhere along the line, someone decided it needed a bed. And you know what? I'm kind of digging it. It's got that classic 70s Ford look up front, but with a twist that'll make everyone at the car show do a double take. Under the hood, we've got a trusty 6-cylinder engine paired with an automatic transmission. With 89,000 miles on the clock, it's got some life experience, but it's far from worn out. The seller describes it as being in good condition, which is pretty impressive for a 40-plus-year-old custom job. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This Fairmont pickup comes with some cool features. It's got air conditioning, which is a nice touch for a car of this vintage. The interior is decked out in red, matching the exterior paint. Talk about coordination. And get this, it's still rocking an 8-track player. How's that for a blast from the past? The seller mentions it has a custom-made cover, which I'm assuming is for the bed. That's a nice touch to protect your cargo, or just keep things looking tidy. Look, I've got to be honest with you. $8,500 might seem a bit steep for a Fairmont. But remember, this isn't your average Fairmont. You're paying for the uniqueness factor here. It's a conversation starter, a head-turner, and a piece of custom automotive history all rolled into one. Is it practical? Maybe not. Is it cool? Absolutely. If you're the kind of person who loves to stand out at car shows, or you just appreciate quirky automotive creations, this 1979 Ford Fairmont pickup could be right up your alley. Just be prepared to answer the question, what is that? About 1,000 times whenever you take it out. But hey, that's half the fun, right? 7. I got a treat for you today. A 1951 Packard 200 that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $12,000. Now let me tell you, this isn't your average classic car find. This is a piece of automotive history that's been meticulously maintained. First off, let's talk about that engine. We're looking at a straight 8-cylinder 288 CI powerhouse, a true marvel of its time. But what really sets this Packard apart is its Ultramatic transmission, one of the first automatic transmissions ever developed. Talk about riding in style. Now, I know what you're thinking. Sure, it's old, but how does it run? Well, folks, the seller claims this beauty is in excellent running and driving condition. And get this, they're even calling it show quality. That's a bold statement, but given Packard's reputation for luxury and quality, I'm inclined to believe it. Let's talk mileage. The odometer shows just 18,000 miles. Now, whether that's original or if it's rolled over, we can't be sure, but either way, it suggests this Packard hasn't been run into the ground. The seller doesn't mention much about the cosmetics, but given the show quality claim, I'd expect the exterior and interior to be in pretty impressive shape. Remember, these Packards were known for their elegant designs and plush interiors. At $12,000, this isn't a bargain basement find, but for a running, driving, show-quality Packard from 1951? That's actually quite reasonable. These cars are becoming increasingly rare, and finding one in this condition is like striking gold. Look, I've got to be straight with you. Buying any 70-year-old car comes with its challenges. You'll need to be prepared for some quirks and maybe some hard-to-find parts. But if you're a true classic car enthusiast, especially one with a soft spot for American luxury cars of the 50s, this 1951 Packard 200 could be your dream come true. Imagine cruising down the street in this rolling piece of history, turning heads and sparking conversations wherever you go. It's not just a car, it's a time machine on wheels. So, if you've got $12,000 burning a hole in your pocket and a passion for preserving automotive history, this Packard might just be calling your name. 8. I've got a real treat for you today. A 1972 Ford Mustang that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $10,000. Now let me tell you, this isn't just any old pony car. This one's got some serious charm and a few surprises under its hood. First off, we're looking at a beautiful yellow coupe with a clean title and only 11,141 miles on the odometer. Now, I've got to be honest, that mileage seems suspiciously low for a 50-year-old car, so it's likely rolled over at least once. But hey, that's not uncommon for classics of this vintage. Under the hood, we've got the factory 302 V8 with a 2-barrel carb. The seller mentions it's been converted to electronic ignition, which is a nice upgrade for reliability. The engine's been rebuilt at some point, though the mileage since then is unknown. It's paired with an automatic transmission, making this Mustang a smooth cruiser. Now here's where it gets interesting. The rear end has been professionally rebuilt with new axle bearings and spider gears. They've also thrown in a new brake booster and master cylinder, so the stopping power should be on point. The car's rolling on rally wheels with hubcaps and beauty rings, but the original wheels are included too. That's a nice touch for the purists out there. And speaking of original parts, the factory stereo comes with the car, even though it's currently sporting a massively upgraded sound system. The best part? It's all installed without any modifications to the car itself. But wait, there's more. This Mustang has a quirky feature that'll make you smile. A capacitor that plays Love Me Tender by Elvis when you use the turn signals. How cool is that? The seller mentions the car is in good condition, and given the details provided, I'm inclined to believe it. It even comes with a dedication plaque to the original owner and still has the original, albeit deflated, spare tire. Look, $10,000 might seem steep for a '72 Mustang, but considering the work that's been done and the overall condition, it's not unreasonable. This isn't a numbers-matching collector's piece, but it's a solid driver with some cool upgrades and original touches. 9. I've got a real gem for you today. A 1961 Ford Falcon that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $14,950. Now let me tell you, this isn't your grandpa's Falcon. This little beast has been given a serious performance makeover. First off, let's talk about that engine. We're looking at a rebuilt 302 V8 with Edelbrock aluminum heads, a performance cam, and a Summit 650 4-barrel carb. This thing's got some serious grunt. It's all dressed up too, with finned valve covers and air filter, a Milden aluminum oil pan, and a custom aluminum radiator with an electric fan. The seller's even thrown in an electric ignition and fuel pump for good measure. Now, here's where it gets even better. This Falcon's got a rebuilt T5 Mustang gearbox with a new MDL hydraulic clutch and a Hurst shifter. Pair that with a rebuilt 9 rear diff, and you've got a drivetrain that's ready to put the power down. The upgrades don't stop there. We're talking front disc brakes, 5-lug 65 Mustang hubs with 17 rev wheels, and a custom drive shaft. Inside, you'll find new seats and carpeting, plus a '63 Falcon Sprint Center console. The seller mentions it needs a headliner, but that's a small job compared to all the work that's been done. Now I've got to be honest with you. The odometer shows 42,085 miles, but it's rolled over at least once. The seller's upfront about this, which I appreciate. They're also clear about the car's condition. It's a California car with very little rust, just a tiny bit on the lower front of the driver's door. Here's an interesting twist. The car's currently wrapped in black vinyl for a movie promotion, but the seller says it can be easily removed. Underneath is the original light blue paint, which has some oxidation. Look, at $14,950, this isn't a cheap Falcon. But considering all the performance upgrades and the overall excellent condition, it's actually quite reasonable. This isn't just a classic car. It's a classic car with modern performance capabilities. 10. I've got a real treat for you today. A 1976 Oldsmobile Delta 88 that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $10,000. Now, let me tell you, this isn't just any old boat from the '70s. This is a piece of American automotive history with some serious muscle under the hood. First off, we're looking at a silver coupe with a clean title, and only 25,893 miles on the odometer. Now, I've got to be honest, that mileage seems suspiciously low for a 47-year-old car, so it's likely rolled over at least once. But hey, that's not uncommon for classics of this vintage. The star of the show here is that big old 455 cubic inch V8 engine. These motors were known for their torque, perfect for cruising and style. The seller says it runs good, which is music to any classic car lover's ears. It's paired with an automatic transmission, so you can just sit back and enjoy the ride. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The seller mentions a new ragtop, which suggests this Delta 88 might be a convertible. If that's the case, we're talking about a pretty rare bird here, folks. The interior is described as clean and original, which is a big plus for authenticity buffs. The AC works, but needs recharging, a minor issue that's easily fixed. And let's be real, with a convertible top, if it indeed has one, who needs AC anyway? The seller describes the overall condition as good, which is promising for a car of this age. They're also open to trades for GM trucks or SUVs, but they're drawing a hard line at Ford. Looks like we've got a true GM enthusiast here. Look, $10,000 might seem steep for a '76 Olds, but if this is indeed a convertible with the big 455 engine, it's not unreasonable. These cars are becoming increasingly rare, especially in good condition. 11. I've got a real piece of American automotive history for you today. A 1951 Cadillac Series 62 that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $8,500. Now let me be straight with you, this isn't a showroom-ready beauty, but it's got potential written all over it. First off, we're looking at a black sedan with 95,000 miles on the clock. That's a fair bit of road for a 70-year-old car, but hey, it means this caddy's got some stories to tell. The seller's honest about its condition, describing it as fair, so let's keep our expectations realistic. Under that long hood, you'll find the original 331 cubic inch Hemi V8, paired with the Hydromatic transmission. This powertrain was cutting edge for its time, and it's pretty cool that it's still intact. The seller says it runs, drives, and stops, which is always a good start for a project car. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The front suspension is new, which is a big plus. These old boats can be a handful with worn-out suspension. They've also thrown in some new Coker whitewall tires, which will really pop against that black paint once you get it cleaned up. The seller mentions that the electrical system is old solid core, which might be a concern for some. It could mean you're in for some rewiring if you want to make this caddy a reliable daily driver. Look, I've got to be honest with you, this car needs some love. The seller admits it's been sitting in the garage for too long, which usually means there's work to be done. But at $8,500, you're getting a lot of car for your money. These Series 62 Cadillacs are becoming increasingly rare, especially with their original drivetrains intact. 12. I've got a real gem for you today, a 1978 Chevrolet Corvette that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $14,500. Now let me tell you, this isn't just any old Vette. This is a piece of American sports car history with a story to tell. First off, we're looking at a coupe with only 66,000 original miles on the clock. That's impressively low for a car that's over 4 decades old. The seller claims it's all original and has never been repainted, which is pretty rare for a Corvette of this vintage. If that's true, it's a real time capsule. Under the hood, we've got the classic Chevy V8 paired with an automatic transmission, perfect for cruising in style or hitting the highway for a weekend getaway. The seller says it runs and drives, which is always music to a classic car buyer's ears. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The seller's been the proud owner of this beauty since 1993, making them only the second owner. That's nearly 30 years of history with the same person. It suggests this Corvette has been well loved and cared for. The listing describes it as a peace car, which I'm assuming is a typo for peace car. Maybe it's been their peaceful weekend cruiser all these years. Or perhaps they meant piece of history. Either way, it adds to the charm. Look, I've got to be honest with you. At $14,500, this isn't the cheapest 78 Corvette out there. But considering the low mileage, original condition, and long-term ownership, it could be a solid investment for the right buyer. These C3 Corvettes are becoming increasingly collectible, especially ones in original unmodified condition. So if you're in the market for a classic Corvette that you can drive and enjoy right away, with the potential to appreciate in value, this 78 could be your ticket to sports car nirvana. Just be prepared to turn some heads and field a lot of questions at car shows. A Corvette this original is bound to attract attention. Remember though that any 45-year-old car will need some TLC, even one as well preserved as this seems to be. But hey, that's part of the fun of classic car ownership, right? So, if you're ready to live the Corvette dream, give the seller a call and get more info. This could be the beginning of your own 30-year love affair with a classic American sports car. 13. I've got a real treat for you today, a 1955 Ford Fairlane two-door club sedan that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $15,000. Now let me tell you, this isn't just any old 50s cruiser. This is a slice of American automotive history that's been kept period correct and in good condition. First off, we're looking at a Fairlane with 82,000 miles on the clock. That's a fair bit of road for a 68-year-old car, but it's clear this Ford's been well maintained. The seller describes it as being in good condition, which is pretty impressive for a vehicle of this vintage. Under that long hood, you'll find a Y-block V8 engine, which was Ford's first overhead valve V8 and a real powerhouse for its time. It's paired with a 3-speed manual transmission with overdrive, so you'll get that authentic 50s driving experience with a little extra efficiency on the highway. Now here's where it gets interesting. The seller says everything works except the clock. In a car this old, that's pretty remarkable. They've also just installed new air shocks and tires, which should make for a smoother, more comfortable ride. And get this, they've even got the original wheels and hubcaps, which is a nice touch for the purists out there. The seller encourages potential buyers to see and drive the car to truly appreciate it. That's usually a good sign. They're confident in the car's condition and performance. Look, $15,000 isn't chump change, but for a well-maintained, period-correct 55 Fairlane, it's actually quite reasonable. These cars are becoming increasingly rare, especially in good, drivable condition. So if you've been dreaming of cruising in 50s style and don't mind shifting your own gears, this 1955 Ford Fairlane could be your ticket to ride. It's not a perfect show-quality car, but it sounds like a solid driver that you could enjoy right away while gradually restoring it to its former glory. 14. I've got a real gem for you today. A 1962 Ford Falcon Futura Coupe that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $250. Now let me tell you, this isn't your grandma's Falcon. This little beast has been given a serious performance makeover. First off, we're looking at a rare Futura Coupe model, which is already a cool find. But what really sets this Falcon apart is what's under the hood. We're talking about a modified 302 V8 engine. That's a serious upgrade from the original inline-six these cars typically came with. Paired with a 4-speed manual transmission and a race clutch, this Falcon's ready to fly. The odometer shows 64,776 miles, but with all these modifications, I'd take that with a grain of salt. The seller describes the condition as excellent, which is pretty impressive for a 60-year-old car that's been hot-rodded. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. This Falcon's rolling on aftermarket rims and tires, which probably give it a more aggressive stance than your typical 62 Falcon. The paint is described as custom, so you know this bird's going to stand out in a crowd. The seller's being a bit coy with the details, saying they'll only answer questions from serious buyers. That usually means they know they've got something special on their hands. Look, at $8,250, or best offer, this isn't the cheapest Falcon out there. But considering the rare Futura trim, the V8 swap, and the performance upgrades, it's actually quite reasonable. This isn't just a classic car, it's a classic car with serious hot rod credentials. So if you're in the market for a unique classic that can probably smoke most modern cars off the line, this 1962 Ford Falcon Futura could be your ticket to ride. Just be prepared for a lot of questions at car shows, and maybe a few challenges at stoplights. Remember though, with great power comes great responsibility. This isn't your typical Sunday cruiser. It's a hot rod in classic clothing. But if you're ready to tame this Falcon, it could be the start of an awesome adventure in classic car ownership. Just make sure you've got your racing gloves ready. 15. I've got a real treat for you today. A 1984 Cadillac Seville that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $10,000. Now let me tell you, this isn't just any old caddy. This is a well-maintained piece of American luxury that's been cared for like a precious gem. First off, we're looking at a white sedan with only 88,000 miles on the clock. That's impressively low for a car pushing 40 years old. The seller describes it as being in excellent condition, and based on their description, I'm inclined to believe them. Under that long hood, you'll find the infamous 4.1L V8 engine, also known as the HT4100. Now, I've got to be honest with you, these engines had a bit of a reputation back in the day, but the seller claims they've never had an issue with it. That's a good sign, especially considering the documented maintenance history they're offering. Speaking of maintenance, this Seville's got some nice upgrades. We're talking about an upgraded radiator and a brand new AC compressor that's been converted, likely to a modern refrigerant. That's a big plus for keeping this classic cool and comfortable. The interior is described as flawless, with no rips or tears in the seats or headliner. Remember, this is 80s Cadillac luxury we're talking about. Think plush velour and plenty of space to stretch out. One of the coolest things about this Seville? Its front-wheel drive, which was pretty cutting edge for a luxury car of this era. The seller says it runs and drives perfectly, which is music to any classic car buyer's ears. Now, here's the kicker. Everything works on this car. If you've ever dealt with 80s electronics, you know how rare that is. They've even got 2 sets of those iconic gold Cadillac keys. Look, $10,000 isn't chump change, but for a Cadillac Seville in this condition, with documented maintenance and everything working, it's actually quite reasonable. These cars are becoming increasingly collectible, especially well-maintained examples like this one. So, if you've been dreaming of cruising in 80s luxury style, and don't mind the occasional curious look from passers-by, that bustleback design was unique, this 1984 Cadillac Seville could be your ticket to ride. It's not a muscle car or a sports car, but man, if you want to feel like a boss rolling down the street, it's hard to beat a classic Caddy like this. 16. I've got a real treat for you today, a 1985 Chevrolet Camaro IROC Z2A8 that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $9,000. Now let me tell you, this isn't just any old Camaro. This is a piece of American muscle car history with some serious street cred. First off, we're looking at a black and gold T-top coupe with just over 100,000 miles on the clock. That's pretty reasonable mileage for a 38-year-old car, especially one that's likely seen its fair share of spirited driving. The seller describes it as being in good condition, which is promising for a car of this vintage. Under the hood, we've got the 305 TPI, tuned port injection V8 engine. These engines were known for their balance of power and efficiency, at least by 80s standards. The seller says it runs great, which is always music to a potential buyer's ears. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The owner's done some recent work on this IROC Z. We're talking about a new distributor, ignition coil, and rotor, all critical components for keeping that V8 running smoothly. They've also installed a new Champion 3-row radiator, which should help keep things cool under the hood. The AC has been converted to R134A, which is a nice modern touch. It's blowing cold, but there's a small issue with the vents that the seller thinks might be a vacuum line. That's a pretty common issue with cars of this era and shouldn't be too hard to sort out. One of the coolest features? Those T-tops. Nothing says 80s quite like cruising with the T-tops off on a sunny day. And with custom interior work, you'll be riding in style. The tires are described as being in excellent condition, which is another plus. Good rubber can make a big difference in how these cars drive. Now, I've got to be honest with you, the title has a lien on it, which means there's still money owed on the car. That's something you'll want to sort out with the seller before making any deals. Look, $9,000 isn't chump change, but for an IROC Z2A8 in good condition with some recent maintenance work, it's not unreasonable. These cars are becoming increasingly collectible, especially the IROC Z models. 17. I've got a real gem for you today. A 1969 Ford LTD that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $7,500. Now let me tell you, this isn't just any old LTD. This is a family heirloom with a fascinating history and some serious muscle under the hood. First off, we're looking at a Brittany Blue Iridium Beauty with a black vinyl top and interior. This color combo is stunning, and it's even more special knowing it was the seller's dad's favorite. With 132,000 miles on the clock, this LTD has seen its share of road, but it's been in the family since new. Talk about provenance. Now let's talk about what's under that long hood, a 428 V8 engine. That's some serious displacement, folks. Paired with an FMX automatic transmission and factory dual exhaust, this LTD was built to cruise in style and power. It's loaded with options too: AC, power steering, power disc brakes, AM/FM radio, electric clock, power seat, and even a deluxe rim blow steering wheel. This was top-of-the-line luxury for 1969. Here's where it gets even better. The seller has put some serious work into this car over the past 2 years. We're talking about a new or remanufactured engine, transmission, front suspension, steering system, brakes, rear differential, axles, and more. They've even replaced the carpet, seat belts, and weather stripping. The body is described as perfect with no rust anywhere. That's pretty rare for a 54-year-old car. The seller's story adds a whole new layer of cool to this LTD. Their dad was a Ford executive, and this car is part of a collection of Ford vehicles they've been restoring. It's clear this LTD has been loved, but the seller is ready to pass it on to someone who can finish the restoration. Look, $7,500 for a '69 LTD with a 428, this many new parts, and this kind of history? That's a steal in my book. These big Ford luxury cruisers are becoming increasingly collectible, especially ones with big engines and interesting stories. So, if you've been dreaming of owning a piece of late 60s American luxury with some serious power under the hood, this 1969 Ford LTD could be your ticket to ride. It's not quite finished, but it's a solid foundation with a ton of work already done. Just imagine cruising down the highway in this land yacht, that big 428 rumbling, surrounded by all that 60s luxury. Now that's what I call living the American dream. Just remember, even with all the work that's been done, a classic car like this will always need some TLC. But for the right enthusiast, this LTD could be the start of an amazing journey. So if you're ready to be the next caretaker of this family heirloom, give the seller a call. This is a chance to own not just a car, but a piece of Ford history. 18. I've got a real gem for you today. A 1970 Pontiac Le Mans Sport that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $8,500. Now let me tell you, this isn't a perfect show car, but it's a solid project with tons of potential. First off, we're looking at a red two-door hardtop with 97,000 miles on the clock. This beauty's been in storage for 23 years and has only been out for about a year. The seller says it runs and drives nice, which is pretty impressive for a car that's been sleeping for so long. Under the hood, you'll find the original matching 350 cubic inch V8 paired with a 350 automatic transmission. It's got power steering and power disc brakes, which were pretty fancy for 1970. The interior's got bucket seats, a floor shifter, and a center console, all the makings of a proper muscle car. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The seller, who's a certified technician, has put about $3,000 worth of new parts under the hood. We're talking new brakes, new dual exhaust, and a thorough mechanical once-over. They even say they wouldn't be afraid to drive it long distance. But let's be real. This is a 50-year-old unrestored car, and it needs some love. The trunk floor and right quarter panel need replacing, and there's some rust in the front fenders and passenger quarter panel. The windshield is cracked and the headliner's got some mouse damage. But the frame is solid, and the seller says the floorboards and rockers are good too. The interior is described as being in nice original condition. The dash pad isn't cracked, which is rare for these cars. The factory radio still works, and even the carpet is decent, just faded. They've even thrown in some new GTO door panels up front. Look, $8,500 might seem steep for a car that needs work, but consider this. You're getting a numbers-matching Le Mans Sport with a ton of new mechanical work already done. These cars are becoming increasingly collectible, especially as GTO prices continue to skyrocket. So, if you've been dreaming of owning a piece of muscle car history and don't mind getting your hands dirty, this 1970 Pontiac Le Mans Sport could be your ticket to ride. It's not perfect, but it's a solid foundation for a restoration. Just imagine cruising down the strip in this beauty once you've got it sorted out. That's what the muscle car dream is all about. 19. I've got a real treat for you today. A 1985 Chevy El Camino Super Sport that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $5,000. Now let me tell you, this isn't just any old El Camino. This is a well-preserved piece of automotive history that's been living the good life in the dry climates of California and eastern Washington. First off, we're looking at a Super Sport model with 145,623 miles on the clock. That's a fair bit of road for a 38-year-old vehicle. But the seller describes it as having a strong running 305 V8 with a factory 4-barrel carb. That's music to any gearhead's ears. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This El Camino is sporting some rare Hurst Dazzler 15-inch gold anodized aluminum wheels with new Firestone tires. Talk about a blast from the 80s past. The body is described as clean and straight with no signs of accidents, which is pretty impressive for a car truck of this vintage. The seller's done some recent maintenance too. We're talking about a new water pump, fuel pump, battery, and radiator hoses. That's a good sign that this El Camino's been cared for. But wait, there's more. This El Camino is loaded with options: power steering, power brakes, power windows, factory AC, tilt wheel, and even the factory rally pack gauges with a tachometer. That's a lot of creature comforts for a vehicle that can haul your stuff in the back. One of the coolest things about this El Camino? It's described as being in clean stock original form and hasn't been messed with much. That's getting rarer and rarer these days, especially with vehicles like the El Camino that are often customized. The seller claims it's a good, solid, rust-free car, which isn't surprising given its California and Eastern Washington history. It comes with a clean Washington title, a couple sets of keys, and even the repair manuals. Look, $5,000 for a Super Sport El Camino in this condition is actually quite reasonable. These vehicles are becoming increasingly collectible, especially ones that haven't been heavily modified. So, if you've been dreaming of owning a piece of 80s automotive uniqueness that can haul more than just your friends, this 1985 Chevy El Camino Super Sport could be your ticket to ride. It's not perfect, but it sounds like a solid driver that you could enjoy right away while gradually restoring it to its former glory. 20. I've got a real gem for you today, a 1950 Oldsmobile Rocket 88 that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist for $13,000. Now let me tell you, this isn't just any old car. This is a piece of American automotive legend that helped kickstart the muscle car era. First off, we're looking at a Rocket 88 with only 19,500 miles on the clock. Now, I've got to be honest, for a 73-year-old car, that mileage seems suspiciously low. It's likely the odometer has rolled over at least once, but hey, that's not uncommon for classics of this vintage. Under the hood, we've got the legendary 303 cubic inch Rocket V8 engine. This power plant was a game changer back in 1950, offering unprecedented power for a mass-produced car. The seller mentions it's got a 4-barrel carb, which should give it some extra oomph. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The original hydromatic transmission has been swapped out for a Chevy 350 automatic. That's a pretty common upgrade that often improves reliability and drivability. But don't worry, purists. The seller says the original hydromatic is available if you want to keep it all Oldsmobile. The seller describes the condition as good and says it runs well, which is always music to a classic car buyer's ears. However, they don't give us much detail about the body or interior condition, so you'll want to check that out in person. Look, $13,000 for a running driving Rocket 88 isn't outrageous in today's market. These cars are becoming increasingly collectible, especially as more people recognize their importance in automotive history. The Rocket 88 is often credited as being one of the first muscle cars after all. So, if you've been dreaming of owning a piece of automotive history that helped shape the muscle car era, this 1950 Oldsmobile Rocket 88 could be your ticket to ride. It's not a numbers-matching all-original example, but that Chevy transmission swap might make it more enjoyable as a driver.